Erev Tov Rabotai, we're continuing with our Mishna Yomi Masechet Maasrot. We're up to Perek Aleph, Mishnah Gimel. Today's Mishnah should be Led Nishmat Neria ben Svetlana Aranbayev and Eliyahu ben Burcha Israelov Minuchatam Began Eden Amen. The Mishnah continues teaching when different kinds of produce become subject to Maasrot. Hecharovin Mishenakedu, carobs become subject to Maasrot once they develop black spots. And Mifalshim explain when a carob starts to ripen, it develops black spots. By the time it's fully ripe, it's completely black, which is a darkish brown. Similarly, all dark fruits become obligated once they develop black spots. Hagasim, pears, Kerustumlin and krustumlin, which are, the Rav says here, a small type of apple that resembles a gallnut. And in Kelaim, chapter 1, Mishnah 4, the Rav says that it's a small kind of pear. And the Mifalshim say maybe here the Rav's referring to one of the varieties of pears that are apple-shaped. Vehaparishim, quinces, vauzradim, and sorb apples, mishikarechu, they all become subject to the laws of Maasrot once they develop bald spots, meaning once the fuzzy surface that covers them when they are small starts to fall off, leaving some empty spots where there is no fuzzy covering. And Mifalshim explained, the Rav says, this is a sign that they are starting to ripen. When they are fully ripe, the fuzzy covering falls off completely. Now, the Tefillat Yisrael does point out that our pears today do not grow with this covering, so must be the Mishnah is discussing certain varieties of pears that do have such a covering. Similarly, all white fruits, meaning what Tefillat Yisrael says, all fruits that are light colored, not red or black, they become subject once they have bald spots. Fenugreek is obligated once it would sprout, meaning once it has grown enough that if the seeds were planted, new fenugreek would grow. That's when it becomes obligated in Maasrot. And Mifalshim explained, the Rav writes, one way to tell that the seeds would sprout is by putting them in water. Any seed whose majority sinks under the water is ready to be planted. And the Mishnah concludes, Hatvua bezitim mishechnisu shlish, grain and olives are subject to Maasrot once they grow to a third of their full size. And that is in Rabotai Mishnah Gimel. Mishnah Dal is going to continue what we learned in Mishnah Aleph, that Mishnah Aleph said those kinds of produce that can be eaten as soon as they start growing, they're subject to laws of Maasrot, even if they're picked when they're very small. The Mishnah is going to give us some examples of what we learned in Mishnah Aleph. Ubeyarak, among the vegetables, Hakishuim, cucumbers, Vadruim and gourds, Vavatichim and melons, Vamelafifonot and Kirby cucumbers, which are a type of small cucumber, Hatapuchim, and among the fruits, apples, Vatrugin and Etrugim, Chayvim, Gedulim, Uktanim. These are all subject to Maasrot, whether they are picked when they are big or small, because they are all edible as soon as they start growing. Rabbi Shimon poter et Etrugim bikotnan. However, Rabbi Shimon disagrees. He exempts Etrugim from Maasrot while they are still small, because Rabbi Shimon holds that Etrugim that have just started growing are not edible enough to be subject to Maasrot. The Rav does tell us Rabbi Shimon, that Rabbi does not follow Rabbi Shimon. Now, as an introduction to what we're going to say right now, the Mishnah is going to teach about a certain kind of produce that can only be eaten before it reaches its full size. There are two different types of almonds, bitter ones and sweet ones. Bitter almonds cannot be eaten when they are ripe because they are too bitter. They can only be eaten when they are still small and not yet so bitter. Sweet almonds, on the other hand, they can only be eaten when they're ripe, not when they're small. So based on this, the Mishnah gives the following rule. What is subject to the laws of Maasrot in the case of bitter almonds, meaning the small unripe ones, is not subject to them in the case of sweet almonds. Why? Because small bitter almonds are edible, but the small sweet almonds are not. What is subject to the laws of Maasrot in the case of sweet almonds, meaning the large ripe almonds, is not subject to them in the case of bitter ones, because large ripe sweet almonds are edible, but large bitter almonds are not. And Mifalshim explained in short, bitter almonds do not fit into either of the categories starting Mishnah Aleph, because they are food only when they are small and not when they ripen. And that is in Rabotai today's Mishna Yomi. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen v'amen.